Well, a very good evening. It's a beautiful, sunshiny evening, and it's lovely to have you all here. If you want to ask questions, please do drop them in the chat box, and I'll get to them at the end. I tend to talk about 1,000 miles an hour, so it is being recorded, and you can watch again, and hopefully you'll find this useful, interesting, helpful. So I'm talking tonight about autoimmune disorders, and it is a subject that is very close to my heart, as over the years I have had my own struggles with autoimmune disorders. I've had difficulties with a condition called Hidradenitis Suppurativa. There you go. You can't say that one very quickly. So I'm going to call it HS. So you know what I'm talking about. So HS, well, it's a horrible skin disease that causes painful, reoccurring bumps that may leak fluid and scar when they heal. HS is often, it looks awful, and it does get mistaken for lots of other weird skin conditions, but it often gets mistaken for acne. It looks like nasty boils. It could be mistaken for cysts, and it's also often mistaken for folliculitis as well. For me, how it impacted me, well, it meant, for me, it was sort of big egg-sized and golf ball-sized lumps that looked like boils, very, very painful, very, very sore, underneath my breasts, underneath my arms, in my armpits, and in my groin as well. For many people who have HS, they also struggle with these sores between their buttocks and on the perineum too. It started for me when I was in my teens. I had one massive painful lump on my bottom, not really the sort of thing you want to talk about when you're a teenager and like you've got hair sprouting places and it's all embarrassing and awful, but it kind of remained for a few weeks. I thought it was acne, like just a big bad acne spot, but then it seemed to never really heal. It came and it went, and it came and it went, and it came and it went. And then things got progressively worse. Didn't actually have a proper diagnosis of this until I was in my late 30s. And in the UK, I haven't had a proper diagnosis of this until I was actually in my early 40s. So these are the sorts of conditions that they're embarrassing. People don't want to talk about them. And people don't usually get a diagnosis for many, many years. The swollen lumps that you tend to get with things like HS, they spontaneously rupture. So as well as them being massive and sore, when they burst, there is a very strong smelling discharge. I've always said it smells like rotten baked beans. That's maybe just my own interpretation of the disgusting smell that can happen with them. When these sores heal, it feels good for a few weeks, but then potentially they reoccur. These sores, these lesions, then often fuse into dermal abscesses, which continuously leak pus, they can be really hard to heal. Fistulas can form, leading to development of excessive tunnels under the skin, known as sinus tracts, and these cause inflammation and infection, and they can travel deeper. And I should just say inflammation and infection, because those are two key words that you're going to hear me talking about a lot in the talk today. These kind of like sinuses, these tracts that come, they can travel deeper and then become really widespread. And for me and for other sufferers, when they heal, or even between kind of flary times, we're left with very thick, painful scar tissue that does sort of limit movement in affected areas. I also have experienced horrific itching all over my skin, as well as on the kind of sore areas, burning and profusive sweating. As with most autoimmune conditions, aches and pains and tiredness as well. HS and other autoimmune diseases do impact on quality of life. You can imagine they do sort of cause psychological symptoms such as depression, anxiety, stress, and low self-esteem. Social isolation, I don't really want to go out while I feel like this, or I don't want to go out while I've got this horrible, nasty sore, and problems with intimacy. And I know for years I had this kind of almost like a mantra in my mind, like, who'd want to have sex with me when I've got breasts and private parts all covered in nasty sores? Well, it's estimated that just 1% of the population are affected by HS, and there has been very little research into why it happens, what makes it worse, and if there's any kind of genetic predisposition. No one's ever been able to tell me why I have this. The general advice is don't smoke. Don't do that. Being overweight can make it worse, and people who do struggle with lots of very bad acne or polycystic ovary syndrome may also be at greater risk. People with a biological parent who's got it, so some genetics there maybe. And African-American women aged 40 and under are apparently at the highest risk of developing this particular type of autoimmune disorder. So if clients do come to you with HS, they may not have had a proper diagnosis, but it's really helpful to do sort of things like weight management work with them, and smoking cessation is also really, really helpful, because those things do make those flares worse and happen more frequently. So it does tend to start after puberty, and it does tend to persist for many years. And supposedly, the doctors will tell you, it gets worse over time with serious effects on your daily life and emotional well-being. There are lots of experts that I've read, all different things that have said it could be connected to hormones, genetics. They do think that there is a bit of a genetic predisposition. And obviously cigarette smoking, like I've already mentioned, and being overweight are two things that I think those are the sorts of things that just make everything worse. So particularly if you're going to work with anyone with autoimmune or chronic conditions, getting their weight under control and certainly stopping smoking are going to be the best things that you can do, supporting them to have a better life. Even though it's horrible and pussy and nasty and yucky and smells nasty, it's really got nothing to do with being unclean or not having a proper wash. And it's absolutely not contagious, although it looks as if it could be. Over the years, I have experienced total desperation with this condition, and I have tried so many crazy things. And when you're working with people with autoimmune, I share this because desperate people will do anything. I have rubbed potatoes on my skin. I have wrapped myself in onion skins because I was told that was detoxing. I have rubbed cloves of garlic on various parts of my anatomy. I've done fasting, changed my diet, cut out gluten, cut out dairy, cut out nightshades. I've had allergy testing. I've been on all the kind of Western medical treatments, loads of steroids and antibiotics, loads of prescriptions for all different things, creams, lotions, and potions. But over the past 2 years, I decided that I would kind of practice what I preach, and I would actually use clinical hypnosis. I have been absolutely delighted with the positive results that I've experienced myself. It's just been unreal. When I started using clinical hypnosis on myself, I was at a stage 3, which basically means that I'm facing surgery to have these kinds of sore areas removed, or have autoimmune or immune suppressive medication. At this current time, right here, right now, today, I've been officially, by the doctors, downgraded to a stage 2, but I believe that I've actually regressed it right back to a stage 1. I no longer experience such intensive flares. The sores that I get, quite small, just annoying pimples, and they're quite manageable. I still get a little bit of fatigue, and I do still get aches and pains and a bit sweaty from time to time. However, I am aware of my own secondary gains. It's quite handy to have a flare up when I don't want to do the washing up. It's quite handy to have a flare up if I'm tired and I can't be asked to make tea, or if I can't be bothered to walk the dog. But we are all beautiful works in progress, but there are some benefits to this, and I am definitely aware of that. And I'm also aware that whenever I play out those benefits, I'm feeling poorly, I'm having a flare up, please can you make dinner, I'm actually reinforcing all of those symptoms. So be aware of the secondary gains. A little bit more about HS. So your body produces a protein called TNF alpha. This, along with other inflammatory proteins, seem to increase inflammation throughout the body, which in turn can cause these abscesses underneath or on the surface of the skin. So inflammation and infection, those are gonna keep coming up all the way through this talk, as I was saying. But Humira is the autoimmune suppressant that I was offered, and this is one of the sort of groundbreaking treatments for autoimmune. It is an autoimmune suppressant. It works by targeting and blocking that TNF alpha, which is thought to contribute to the symptoms of HS, but it certainly contributes to inflammation in the body. And many patients are seeing some really positive results, with about 50% in the reduction of the number of abscesses and nodules that people are experiencing. These medications work by suppressing the immune system. And while drugs like this are like super effective at treating symptoms of various inflammatory diseases, they also put users at great risk. Greater risk of serious and even sort of deadly infections and cancers. Side effects are awful. Humira is often injected as well, which brings lots more risks and obviously possible infections. And because it is an immune suppressant, anyone who takes these medications has to be tested for TB before they give you it. Because just using Humira can cause an increase in bacteria. For example, Legionella disease, Legionella and Listeria bacteria can be increased. And the list of side effects is like nasty and numerous. So I didn't want to go down the route of surgery and autoimmune suppressant medications, which is why I kind of went, I do this thing called hypnotherapy. Maybe I can apply that to myself. And I think I really feel that I've had more benefit from using hypnotherapy than I would have done had I have taken medication, but that is my own personal choice and journey. So just a few kind of like interesting facts about all autoimmune disorders, really. Autoimmune disorders occur almost exclusively in developed countries. So about 10% of the world's population suffers from one or more there's more than 100 autoimmune diseases. So let's just put that 10% into perspective. The prevalence and cost of autoimmune disease is greater than cancer, heart disease, and diabetes combined. So there's a lot of people out there who need your help. It's one of the top 10 causes of death in women under the age of 65. And I'm sure that there are other mental health conditions and even suicides that come as a result of these conditions as well. People in underdeveloped countries that don't have modern amenities, that don't have cleaning or water or washing machines or flushing toilets and good healthcare, they don't really experience these diseases, which doesn't seem to make any sense unless you look at the difference in lifestyle. obviously we live in a very busy modern society. We don't have great ways to manage stress. We sit a lot. We live quite sedentary lives. We do little to work with or exercise our bodies. We have very little time to relax properly. And even when we are relaxing, we're usually like crashing out watching Netflix, and it's all very stimulating and exciting and not real relaxation or actual just finding tranquility or peace within. And we've not been taught how to pay attention to what our body is telling us. So for many people, and particularly people with autoimmune, it's almost like the autoimmune response is just the body going, hello, you need to listen to me. And then when you're not listening, it just gets louder and louder and louder until you're so poorly, you've got no choice but to go to bed, which was what I used to have to do. I used to have to go to bed for like 3 days in a row. I used to spend 3 days in bed, just get up and go to the loo and go back. You know, naturally, we jump in the car, don't we, instead of choosing to walk. We buy most of our foods in one place rather than walking from shop to shop. And we don't even really spend very much time sitting and chatting and just being with other people, friends and family. Those kind of connections that are really important. Certainly in developed countries, our food is more processed and we are exposed to more chemicals and pollution as well. The dramatic increase in toxicants in our environment, diets filled with sugar, simple carbohydrates, and overemphasis on antibiotics and an underemphasis on basic stress relief practices, well, it's not surprising that we really are facing an autoimmune epidemic. So the list of autoimmune diseases is long. It's really, really long, and it's growing and includes things like Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, Graves' disease, type 1 diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis, celiac disease, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, eczema, psoriasis, even chronic Lyme disease, and some types of heart disease have recently been classified as autoimmune. And symptoms can range from embarrassing and frustrating to, you know, totally debilitating, and may show up like I was saying, years before an official diagnosis is made. Things like profound fatigue, and like, you know, I say to people fatigue, but like there's doesn't matter how much you rest, you're still exhausted. Insomnia, not, you know, not matter how exhausted you are, you can't get off to sleep. Brain fog, body aches and pains, numbness and tingling, hair loss, swelling, and that stubborn extra weight that people struggle to reduce are among the most common of complaints with autoimmune disorders. Good news is hypnotherapy, in my own experience, has been amazing, but has been shown to be very successful in helping patients resolve allergies as well. And autoimmune disease is very similar to allergies. Allergies involve an unacceptable immune response towards something external to our body. It might be foods, or it might be a bee sting, or it might be pollen. But with autoimmune disorders, it's something within our body that's causing an abnormal reaction in our immune system. This reaction causes our immune system to attack or to fight the body itself. And a little bit of Deepak Chopra says that every thought and every emotion you experience touches every single cell in your body. So what do you think happens to your body when you constantly feed it negative thoughts? Well, it probably experiences a negative emotional state, which then leads to either physical pain, illness, or discomfort, or an autoimmune response. One of the major contributors to inflammation and autoimmune disease is our emotional well-being. So we need to support our clients to reduce an inflammatory lifestyle and reduce inflammatory lifestyle factors, and add in some helpful ones and some self-love ones and some really nourishing ones that are going to balance health. We need to support our clients to make quite proactive choices and break down those transformation or changes in their lives into quite actionable and manageable steps. If it's all too much and too big, it's not achievable, and it giving up very quickly is something that can happen. We can help our clients to reduce their toxic load of processed foods, and we can advise them to remove toxic chemicals from their homes and from their personal care products. Most of all, we can guide them in addressing toxic stress, encourage and support them to add the good stuff into their lives, eating real whole foods, prioritizing sleep, and adapting easily, and sort of bringing into their lives daily relaxation practices, healthy calming habits. In other words, we can support our clients to give their bodies what their bodies are shouting for, what their bodies need. And when that happens, the bodies are amazing. It'll repair, it'll restore itself, and it'll even, our clients can even thrive. I certainly feel like I'm thriving. As hypnotherapists, we really do have the keys to reversing autoimmune conditions, helping our clients reclaim their health. And Milton Erickson once said, the subconscious mind is like a warehouse, a bit of a warehouse of resources. Most people go into the warehouse with a little torch and just have a little look around, tiny little flashlight. But actually, what we need to do with Autoimmune is go in there and turn all the lights on. We need to look at multiple different ways of working with Autoimmune. We need to have a choice of what resources our unconscious mind wants to use, or what we can use within the unconscious mind as well. So yeah, why not choose all of the resources that are going to help us to empower our clients to heal and to help us the most. So I'm focusing mostly in today's session on listening to and working with our body and how that strongly relates to the mind, and obviously the use of hypnotherapy. But I'm also including just some good basic information that you can help to guide you in what tools or techniques you're going to use with clients, but certainly to help advise them and empower them on their healing journey. So I get a lot of my information from functional medicine, which is a very whole person based scientific approach that addresses and resolves health challenges at root cause level. It's the only area that I really feel that has really started to address the epidemic of autoimmune disorders and autoimmune diseases that are sort of impacting us in the West and in sort of modern lifestyle places. Autoimmune disease is not just a one-way street. There are multiple methods that reverse and prevent the multitude of them. And while autoimmune diseases appear to be numerous, it's easier for us to think about them as just one disorder with countless variations based on unique genetic vulnerabilities that your client may have. Every autoimmune condition is an immune system challenge driven by chronic inflammation. So what functional medicine shows us is that if we work at the root level, if we work at kind of that source or the cause level and deal with the inflammation, well, then we can find the keys to recovery. So I like to have a way of remembering these keys of recovery. So I'm using the word fights. because we're fighting autoimmune disorder. Fights with an S. So it stands for, let's look at food as a cause and a solution, infections as a cause and getting rid of infections as a solution, gut health, it's really important to address gut health, hormone balance, getting rid of toxins, and most importantly, reducing stress. So we'll start with food. Food is how we get terribly sick, or it's how we can restore our health. We humans, we used to be hunter-gatherers, where we were kind of out and about eating fresh whole foods harvested and hunted in the wild. There were very few grains, no pesticides, no herbicides, no processed foods, no genetically modified foods. The topsoil was teeming with lots of beneficial organisms, and plants grew in a sort of natural place filled with lots of trace minerals, and those trace minerals were recycled back into the soil for next year's season. And plants and animals provided nourishing, nutrient-dense food, and I would imagine that chronic disease was virtually non-existent. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, where we brought in mass agriculture and big machinery and large scale production to feed like a massively growing population, particularly after World War II. Now we're in a place where we have vast quantities of processed cereal grains like wheat, corn, rice and soy, and they do provide a very cheap and easy source of calories. Fast and frozen and packaged foods are also a very efficient way to provide people with food, which is probably a little bit better and a lot easier than foraging for our sustenance. But this convenience has really come at a cost. And as we've become great mass producers of grains, oils and animals, we've also gotten really sick. A return to health for people with autoimmune disease often follows a return to more traditional ways of eating. This doesn't mean that I'm encouraging you to sharpen up your spear and roam the wild to find your dinner. Although metaphorically speaking, that would be the right direction to go. There are kind of three components to like powerful sources, magic, if you like, that happens when we eat that we need to kind of know a little bit about. This is the epigenetics of food, the microbiome, and the mitochondria as well. And each of these kind of magic forces respond in real time to the foods that you eat. It's like the food that you eat is a message to the body. So to kind of like really briefly understand the epigenetics of food, let's imagine it's lunchtime and you're having a burger. And your burger is just a regular, like typical meat burger that you get from a supermarket. It's probably got a lot of antibiotics in it. It's probably been cooked at a really high heat, and industrial oils might have been used in it to have cooked it, and it'll come in a bun. By eating that burger, you've just turned up the volume on your disease promoting genes. But if your burger had come from an animal that had been 100% grass fed, had been cooked in ghee on a medium heat, perhaps wrapped in an organic lettuce leaf, you might have just turned down the volume on your disease promoting genes. What you choose to eat also directly impacts your microbiome. Sugar and processed foods feed some like bad fungi that produce mycotoxins and yeast infections, whereas like probiotic rich foods like fermented vegetables feed healthy promoting bacteria which maintain beneficial microbial balance. So we need good bacteria, we need that lovely microbiome. And with each food decision that your client chooses, instructions get directly delivered to your body, and those instructions are either harm or heal. You've heard that food is your fuel. Well, your mitochondria are very small, but they're mighty factories, and they're inside each of your cells, and they turn the food that you eat into energy. And the mitochondria produce 90% of your cellular energy, so they're definitely mighty. The number and deficiency of your mitochondria reflect a microcosm of your health and well-being. When your mitochondria are functioning well, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy. But the opposite is also true. When your mitochondria experience harm inflicted by stress, infections, toxins, and like foods that are bad for you, sad foods, your energy producers are given reasons to go on strike. I'm out of here. We're not working today with all of this toxic stuff that's going on. So like when I'm talking about sad foods, I'm talking about gluten, processed fats and oils, sugars and sweeteners, dairy. For a lot of people, dairy is not great. Food additives and chemicals, including monosodium glutamate. Everyone loves a Chinese, don't they? It's full of MSG, and artificial sweeteners. Also, there are just toxic chemicals around us in what we eat and drink. Things like fluoride and chlorine and chloramine and lead, and actually pharmaceutical drugs. It are still sort of traces of it are in your water. Other substances are known to interfere with immune function and disrupt hormones and further cause inflammation in your body. The recommendation is to avoid these toxins and this toxic food, and have lots of water, but fresh, pure water. You know, we have to remember that we are not only what we eat, but we are what we have ever eaten as well. So it's useful to use the techniques that we've got to make really positive associations with the healthy foods, the good foods, and kind of, you know, work to guide our clients away from or reinforce their understanding about how their body is going to react or respond with those unhelpful foods. Also, we need to be careful with meat. Conventionally raised animals are often fed on grains, and they're also quite often fed lots of antibiotics. And things that are, you know, they're grazing fields that are full of pesticides and herbicides, and that can actually, well, the molds on the grains help the cows get bigger and fatter, but they're actually not good for anyone, but they're specifically really not good for anyone with an autoimmune disorder. Corn, soy, also not great, but white table salt's the worst possible thing. If you can, you know, get your clients off salt, have sort of sea salt or Himalayan salt, but sort of salts are really not helpful. Table salt's not helpful. Identifying and eliminating suspect foods. Well, it's quite useful to do this because, you know, one man's food is another man's poison. And when it comes to autoimmune disorders and food sensitivity, that kind of old adage is really quite spot on. And suspect foods can be absolutely harmless to most people, but can be quite harmful for people with autoimmune. Clients are going to be really familiar with food allergies, because they're going to have a very severe reaction with a food allergy. They're going to get poorly very, very quickly. And actually food allergies can be tested for. They usually test for elevated immunoglobulin E antibody. I like to think of the E as emergency. So if they've got high those in the body because of an allergy, it's got an E. But more common with people with autoimmune are just food sensitivities, which do also appear on lab tests as elevated immunoglobulin, but that's immunoglobulin G antibodies. So I like to think of the G as grief, because if you have these foods, you're going to get some grief from these things that you're eating. Food allergies do trigger immediate reactions, whereas food sensitivities often produce delayed reactions. And these delays can be hours afterwards, they can be days afterwards, but they can even be up to a week after you've eaten it that the impact is felt. So what can we recommend? Well, what I recommend is that you guide your client on a 30-day food holiday. Hey, so this is a holiday from anything that they think is suspect, the suspect foods. So particularly if clients are struggling with autoimmune issues that have troubling symptoms like digestive problems, brain fog, headaches, fatigue, or aches and pains, then a 30-day food holiday might be a bit of a challenge, but it'll be a really profound experiment, and it'll really help them to understand what's good, nourishing for their body, and what's really not helpful. So the first step is to select 30 days which are actually going to be doable and realistic, not when you're going on holiday, not when you're having loads of parties, not around Christmas time or any of those sorts of things. Pick a time that's going to work for the client, and maybe the clients quite often already know what those suspect foods are, so get them to make a list of what they think the suspect foods are. And then the second step is to prepare. Go to the shop, get to the supermarket and shop for a wide range of yummy foods. They've got to be yummy foods. Lots of organic foods if you can. Things that they're going to actually really enjoy eating for 30 days, so it's not punishment. Things like wild fish, turkey, chicken, good proteins, lots of organic vegetables, good fats, things like extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, and other fats like avocados and olives. Different fermented foods. Fermented foods are really interesting if you're working with people with autoimmune. Perhaps do a bit more research on those. And foods with a low glycemic foods, herbs and spices, and some useful pantry items like apple cider vinegar and some bone broth. Everybody needs bone broth in their life. It's good old-fashioned stuff, but it's really nourishing. It's a good idea to encourage them to shop for dairy replacements. Get off the caffeine, maybe some organic decaffeinated tea, lots of water, pure water, and if they are going to go for sweeteners, something like stevia is not too bad. Then plan ahead. Step 3 would be plan ahead with lots of meal options and food holiday recipes. I recommend that they look at autoimmune paleo diets for lots of recipes that are free of dairy and eggs and sugar and grains and chocolate and coffee and nuts and nightshades and all of those things that can cause flare-up responses. It's a good idea to plan ahead a little bit. And then I get them to spend a little bit of time at the home, in the kitchen, at their office, and get rid of all of the suspect foods, remove all the temptations as well, get rid of those hidden stash of chocolates from back at cupboard. We want rid of them. And then step 5 would be just to observe. Get into the holiday and just observe and pay attention to how the client is feeling. Perhaps keep some kind of a symptom tracker. I do like a sub-level symptom tracker that they can just monitor how they're feeling. And then after the 30 days, start to very slowly reintroduce foods one at a time in small amounts. Now, clients might want to reintroduce foods in a particular order. I actually think at this point it's useful to get the support of a dietitian or a nutritionalist who can really give good advice in this area, because it's really not my area of expertise, although I've read loads and I know quite a bit about it from my own experience. Always good to refer and work in collaboration with somebody who can give that really good dietary advice if you actually are not able to do so. Then step 7 would be to, make a note of any of the sort of negative reactions that are happening and stop eating those foods, but then congratulate yourself on actually managing the food holiday. And hopefully by the end of those 30 days, or after sort of reintroducing those foods, they're going to have got a bit of a list of foods that they know are just not good for their system, not good for their body. So the second, so that's food. The second is the I in fights, which stands for clearing infections. Loads of people, experts believe that if you have an autoimmune condition, you most likely have an infection too. There's loads of growing scientific evidence which indicates that chronic infections from bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi are big contributing factors in the development and exacerbation of autoimmune conditions. I obviously get sore bits and pieces and they can get infected, so I might just need to deal with the infection there as well. Our immune system is a bit like our armed forces. And it's responsible for protecting us from harmful invaders. When it functions properly, we're very resilient against infections, but with an inflammatory lifestyle, with a diet that consists of lots of simple carbohydrates, sugar, and refined grains, if we add to that poor sleep, minimal movement, excess stress, and then environmental toxins, our immune systems just get totally run down and they just don't operate very well. In short, our modern lifestyles are burdening our immune system. As a result, they are prone to immune dysfunction and infections. So having a bit of a sort of a cleanse, making sure your clients drink plenty, hydrate well, and deal with any infections that there might be. So the next area to kind of enlighten my clients on is their gut. I recommend clients look into healing their gut. So the gut is the seat of all health, and even in 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates, now known as the father of modern medicine, observed that all disease begins in the gut. It's not new. But since the late 19th century, when Louis Pasteur popularized the germ theory as the cause of disease, Western medicine adopted the belief that microbes were a primary reason why we get sick. And while antibiotics have been brilliant and profoundly beneficial on society, helping to wipe out lots of really horrible infectious diseases, it's only more recently that we've begun to understand the collateral damage that's been done by the massive overuse of antibiotics. It's been reported as potentially one of the greatest threats to our health and well-being. But it's useful to kind of know what the gut is, because people are like, heal your gut. What's your gut? What do you mean? And often the gut, when they're talking about the gut, it means the whole of your digestive system. But when I'm referring to the gut today in terms of health and disease, I'm referring to the intestines, the small intestines and the large intestines. So the large intestine is often called the colon. The small intestine is like a lovely flexible passageway, 22 to 23 feet long and an inch in diameter, and it's kind of piled in the middle of your body like a big plate of spaghetti. Tucked into the lining of your small intestine are thousands of tiny little finger-like projections called villi. And these villi absorb nutrients. They're the home of your immune system too. They protect you from lots of unwanted invaders, most of which are things that you eat and pass through your digestive system. The small intestine is possibly the most important barrier between you and the outside world. Looking after this barrier is crucial for maintaining health and healing my gut, and kind of doing a regular cleanse and taking care of my gut was an absolute game changer for me. And your large intestine is also known as your colon, is about 5 feet long. And the large intestine earns its name thanks to the 4-inch diameter. So it's a great big hoofing thing. It's also a really important part of your immune system, as it hosts the largest microbiome in your body. So when we're talking about the microbiome, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a vast ecosystem that's inside the large intestine, and it's full of microbes. It's mostly beneficial bacteria in there, lots of fungi and parasites and bacteriophages. I think I'm saying that right. These are viruses that infect bacteria and kill them off, but they're actually really harmless to us humans. And there needs to be a good balance in there. So why do we need to heal our gut? Quite often I get asked this question: what do I need to heal my gut for when I've got a skin thing or I've got a low energy thing? What's it got to do with my digestive system? Well, you know, if you've got something like IBS or inflammatory bowel disorder or Crohn's disease or colitis, it kind of makes more sense, doesn't it? I guess the simple answer is that if you've got kind of weird, mysterious or unwanted symptoms anywhere in your body, you've probably got issues in your gut as well. So it's like a really good start to heal your gut. And it turns out that Hippocrates was right after all. So my doctor, why didn't he tell me about this information? Why aren't GPs and doctors telling people with autoimmune about this? It seems so simple, doesn't it? Well, my doctor probably didn't even know about the scientific evidence connecting gut with a wide range of chronic health issues. This information is still fairly new. I think it needs to be around for about 50 years before doctors start talking about it, but it's still new, it's still emerging. But it's useful for us to know that 75% of our immune system is actually located in the gut, in the gut anatomy, and autoimmune conditions are immune system problems, not body part problems. Things like antibiotics, antacids, prescription medications, birth control pills, chemotherapy, radiation, and radiation, concussion, excessive alcohol or caffeine consumption, genetically modified foods, heavy metals, not the music, just the things that go in your blood, heavy metals, infections, stress, pain relievers, poor sleep, smoking, fizzy drinks, both regular and diet, those sad foods I was talking about before, toxins, and unresolved emotional trauma all add to an inflammatory lifestyle and keep the gut flora imbalanced and potentially the gut lining leaky. It is useful if you suspect there's something wrong with the gut to take a bit of a gut health assessment. And when I post this out with all my notes and everything and all the references for you to look at, I will add a gut health assessment to that, so you can have a look at it for your own reference. It might be useful. If you want to know what I use to heal my gut, I'm happy to share that information too. I don't want to promote too many products, but I do have one that I think is brilliant that I tend to use all the time. So the H in fights, because we're fighting the autoimmune disorders, are hormones. Hormones. Well, it's easier to fix your hormones than to live with the misery of imbalance. And like a symphony where all the instruments play in harmony, when your hormones are balanced, everything's in tune, you feel good, you look good, you sleep well, you wake up refreshed, you're energetic, your clothes fit you, and your immune system is strong as well. And your metabolism is working really good. So it's optimal kind of function. And your nervous system is nice and steady too. That's because everything is connected and working together. And there's a real feel-good equilibrium called hormonal homeostasis. If you're dealing with an autoimmune condition on top of a busy life, chances are that you're feeling pretty stressed. And when things are out of balance and you don't have energy that you're used to, perhaps exercises become a bit harder. Maybe you've noticed that your muscle mass has started to decline. Perhaps you've even gained a bit of a spare tire around your middle. And perhaps your breasts are a bit droopy as well. I've said that one for the men, not the ladies. Or even growing. While it's true that hormones naturally decline with age, a modern lifestyle has kind of sped up this decline. And hormones may be like tiny little molecules, but their impact is huge. They're involved with almost every function in your body, including regulating appetite, cravings, digestion, sleep, resilience to stress, immune function, tissue repair, reproduction, stamina, moods, cognitive function, which is kind of the brain fog stuff that you get, and whether or not we actually develop immunity. If your client's tired all the time when they come to see you and, you know, they are talking to you about high levels of exhaustion, it might be, well, it's a good idea to recommend that they pop and see their doctor and get a little thyroid test, a standard thyroid stimulating hormone test, just to check that thyroid function is all working well, because actually it could actually just be that. So it might be that they come to us, so red flag, very, very tired all the time, little referral to the GP, possibly for a thyroid test. Hormones are the chemical messages of the endocrine system, which is made up, as we know, of dozens and dozens of glands, including the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, pancreas, thyroid and gonads or ovaries in women, testes in men. Hormones are the body's way of communicating to distant sites, instructing cells to, among other things, develop at puberty, which is possibly why autoimmune starts in puberty quite commonly. But also they help to repair damaged tissue, regulate your blood sugar, fire up your libido, handle emergencies, and stabilize your mood. In response to signals from the brain, hormones travel through the bloodstream and bind to receptors on or inside cells. That it's a little bit more complicated than this, but it's been described as a bit of a perfect lock and key formation. Very simplistic idea, but it's a good way to kind of just get your head around it. When hormone imbalance happens, if your glands don't produce enough hormone, which is like the key, or your receptors are not working, perhaps the locks are all a bit jammed up with synthetic foreign toxins or toxic chemicals, then that's when you're going to get hormone imbalance. And it only takes one hormone imbalance to negatively impact the rest. And then that downward spiral of health problems can follow. So while we have dozens of hormones, there are some star players when it comes to autoimmune issues. And these are thyroid, cortisol, insulin, and the sex hormones, progesterone and testosterone. Other important players include DHEA and vitamin D. And vitamin D is actually a hormone. There are 6 big hormonal imbalances contribute to autoimmune and other chronic diseases. High insulin, obviously with the world that we live in, lots of carbohydrates and sugar get high insulin, and you know, we see so many people with diabetes now as a result of like poor diets. High cortisol, you know, this can cause people to feel tired but wired, edgy, anxious, get palpitations, problems with sleeping. People kind of get salt cravings as well with high cortisol, dizziness, when you stand up, bit of low blood pressure, sugar cravings, all the things that are really bad for you, because your body can't regulate sugar properly. And then quite often we get estrogen dominance as well. So for many people that can just look like weight gain, but it can have all sorts of things like menstrual cramps and puffiness, and other side effects can be things like ovarian cysts, endometriosis, gallbladder issues, a loss in your libido, and in men, it looks like real tiredness, fatigue, and loss of muscle mass, and possibly even sort of urinary tract infections. So lots of UTIs, reduced libido, erectile dysfunction, anxiety, depression, and a big fat belly. Big fat bellies definitely are a sign, and enlarged breasts, for men, not for women. Low thyroid is also option. I could write a book just on low thyroid, but the main thing that you see is sort of hair loss, eyebrows falling out as well, real difficulty with concentration, lots of brain fog stuff. They might get constipation as well, and tiredness, and a bit of aches and pains. I've listed a few others in the notes that you can have a look at. Low vitamin D is one of the biggest undiagnosed health problems in the world, really. Thankfully, it is one of the easiest to fix, and you can get that tested, and you can take a supplement. Low DHEA, which is the foundation hormone, it's known for its immune protective role and association with long life. The two big reasons for a decline in this is aging. We're all getting old, that's it. But chronic stress. Chronic stress, it's like anybody, you know, if you've got autoimmune, chronic stress is your enemy. It's a huge cause of inflammation. In the fight to help people with autoimmune disease, we also need to look at toxins. We need to recommend that our clients minimize toxins. You know, our health is the sum of our relationship with the environment. What we eat, drink, absorb, think, breathe, put on our skin, and how we live and where we live all impact. So getting rid of actual toxins, but also toxic stress is also really important. And we do live in a toxic world, and most of the things that are in your house, like your cleaning products and things that you buy in the shop, only 5% of them are actually sort of tested to see that they're safe. So I recommend practicing a precautionary principle and consider all toxins to be guilty until proven innocent. I know for me, it's things like air fresheners, like Febreze is terrible for me. Just think, a bit stinky in here, we'll have a bit of a spray. Really, really unpleasant, the impact on me. I switched up all my household cleaners for more environmentally friendly cleaners. Old-fashioned things like baking soda, brilliant. I have actually written a blog on how to make your own cleaning products, and if you want to have a look at it, just let me know. I'm quite happy to share that with you. But I can give you access to that too if you want to learn how to make your own cleaning products, so you have less toxic stuff in your house, but we plaster loads of toxic things on our body as well. So looking at more natural products and clearing the toxins out of your life and environment as much as you can is going to really help you. And finally, in fights, the last word is stress, is S for stress. We must address stress. When you can guide your client to maintain a level of inner tranquility, no matter what is happening around them, it's going to be really helpful in helping them to avoid the damage that stress does to everybody's health, but particularly if you have autoimmune. No one can really escape stressful events, and you know, it's been a bit of a crazy old time, isn't it? You know, pandemics and wars and financial problems, and we do share common human burdens of illness and life disruptions and losses of loved ones. For most of us, our bodies are built to weather these storms, and most of the time we kind of like come out the other side, we emerge from the stressful event like whole and not really impacted. But whatever form stress takes, whether it be a physical stress or mental stress or emotional or even traumatic stress, we are designed to withstand it and even thrive and grow from those traumatic experiences or challenging experiences, as long as they're in sort of small doses, really. For many of us, though, all too common, we experience sort of longer lasting periods of stress, and you know, this can have a more damaging effect, whether it's, you know, traumatic or even a shocking event. I was just kind of like, during the pandemic, I was on my own in the house and I was watching the news all the time, and it was like, we're all going to die. It's dangerous out there. Don't go out the front door. It's dangerous out there. And I was like, oh, and I thought, God, blimey, some people have the TV on all day in the background as background noise, don't they? And subconsciously, they're just picking up all that negativity all the time. So I think, you know, part of managing stress is about switching off to things like social media, switching off to things like the news and kind of negative stuff that's coming in that could maybe exacerbate already a challenging, stressful life. The size of the stress, the size of the stress isn't really what matters so much. It's whether we can adapt to it or not. So a stressor is a thing that's stressing you out. And these things can be perceived stresses, they can be real, or they can be just imagined. Now, I know that for a lot of our clients, they'll have imaginary, like if I talk to this person or I ask this person, this is what they will say to me. They've already decided the outcome's going to be negative, and they almost live in this state of looking forward and imagining the worst. I used to call it my doom head, and reliving those negative moments from the past as well. You know, like somebody might have said something a bit shit to you at work that day, but it's like the rest of the day they were lovely, but you'll play over in your mind that moment where they said the really bad thing. You'll zoom in on it with your camera inside your mind and blow it up. You'll turn the volume up on it. You'll make it really loud and you'll replay it on a loop. So helping our clients to have an awareness of what's going on internally inside their mind, so that they can take a little step back and choose how to respond, is definitely something that has benefited me. You know, acute stress is that feeling of emotional distress, pressure, and sometimes even excitement that lasts up to about a month. Usually doesn't cause lasting damage. You know, oh, it's Christmas, I can't wait, that kind of thing. Oh, it's Christmas, oh my goodness, I've got to do all that big shopping stuff. Unless, of course, it's frequently repeated You know, these sorts of acute stresses are things like the pressure of a big deadline or a public speaking event, an unresolved argument with a loved one, or a tax return. They stress me out. Chronic stress is that grinding kind of stress that lasts longer than a month, and it can lead to mental, emotional, and physical breakdown and chronic disease. Chronic stress can come, and I do see this a lot, come from unrelenting daily demands. It might be they just have a really busy job. It might be that they have a chronic illness, or they're actually caring for somebody who does have a chronic illness. But these persistent feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, sleep deprivation, and unresolved traumatic experiences from childhood all seem to have an impact on autoimmune diseases. Your allostatic load, it kind of refers to the level of wear and tear that you can take. And when you've got that chronic stress, your allostatic load, it's just overloaded, and it's harmful, and it does exacerbate autoimmune disorders. And you can see signs of it, you know, when people have got excess belly fat, when they're having loads of different coughs, colds, and flus all after one another. They're just a bit poorly all the time. And actually it can cause an acceleration of heart disease as well. The top 6 stressors, the top of the pops of things that are going to stress you out. Well, coming in at number 1 is money. And oh my goodness, money. I've seen so many people stressing out about money recently. Working with people to have a more abundant mindset, or even manage money. I recommend that clients often have a date night with money. If it's something they have an issue with, if it's something that you have a problem with, spend some time with it, and sort of deal with it. And maybe we can support clients to sort of manage or feel better and more in control with money. Work issues, too much work, stressed at work, bullied at work, those sorts of things, family responsibilities, personal health concerns, and health problems affecting family members, and the economy is also a stressful, in the top of the pops of stressful things. We have a whole heap of tools though, to help people reduce or rid or certainly manage stress. We can recommend things like taking regular exercise. Gentle exercise is really important for people with autoimmune, and proper rest. You know, giving your client an audio to listen to, doing something like a mind gym where they're imagining exercising if they've got very low motivation to exercise. I struggled with exercise for a long time because getting sweaty would cause me to have a skin flare up. So I didn't want to get sweaty, so I didn't want to do exercise. But what I've actually found is that really high impact exercise. I do mixed martial arts now. I love a bit of boxing, gets me right out of my comfort zone, like punching stuff, but I really enjoy it. But that kind of really high impact, very very sharp, and then it's over, and I can go home and sort my skin out, is brilliant for me, and I feel great after it. And I love dancing as well. Dancing, I do a bit of belly dancing. I've got the belly for the belly dancing. But anything that's kind of fun related to exercise, you know, creating some kind of dancing imagery inside your mind is also really good. I call it a mind gym to motivate exercise. And rest, something to help people to sleep. Really simple things, good old-fashioned suggestion therapy, and post-hypnotic suggestions. Write a new script, bit of auto suggestion for your life as well, really helpful. Childhood trauma is really interesting, and studies have showed that people who've experienced 2 or more quite challenging or traumatic childhood experiences increase their likelihood of admission to hospital with an autoimmune disorder by 70 to 100%. People who were cruelly treated in the childhood or in their youth have shown to have very high levels of systematic inflammation during adulthood, sometimes up to 20 years after the negative experiences have occurred. People who've had difficult or stressful childhoods have shown prominent levels of inflammation when they get older. So finding out in your consultation about their past and the circumstances of their life while they were growing up might be helpful too. Then we have the problem with labeling. Any diagnosis of a medical problem or challenge, there's always the difficulty of labeling. I've loved it when I've gone to the doctor and they've said, you'll have this for the rest of your life and it'll only get worse. What a great suggestion that is. And those big labels that, you know, I can barely pronounce even though I've got them, can often, you know, be a real problem. And although labeling for many can bring some great benefits, like I don't have to do washing up, I'm joking, you can get help, can't you, with labels. It can also really worsen symptoms and hold people in those unwell states. Doctors do have a habit of labeling clients, and this often makes it a lot more difficult to heal. You know, when you are told by a doctor that you're going to have this illness for the rest of your life, you're going to believe it, and that becomes part of your issue. Never underestimate the power of a suggestion. Never underestimate the power of what a doctor has said to your client. Even if they kind of dismiss it, it's still going to have an impact. So working with those labels, getting rid of those labels is going to be really helpful. Just remembering the law of attraction, really, or the law of concentrated attention. While labeling is a way of getting help, it also brings the client to concentrate on the idea of being sick. We then begin to create a set of thoughts, a set of beliefs about our own health. So people begin to live the label that's been placed on them, perhaps saying things like, oh, I'm too tired to do this, or I can't do this, or I'm not capable of that. And I know that I've done it when, you know, like I've been planning a big night out with people and then I've thought, oh, I've changed my mind, I really don't want to go. I've gone, oh, I'm really poorly, I can't make it, because I don't want to say I've changed my mind. But obviously anytime you play out those old behaviors, you're just making everything worse. So part of any initial consultation should focus on finding out what self-statements your client is making to themselves, and perhaps help them to write a new script, or suggestions that focus on health and wellness, on energy, on vibrancy, or simply just asking the client what would be the opposite of what you're feeling. So we can get their words and not use ours. And then, you know, create a list of affirmations and encourage your client to read them every day. You know, affirmations have been shown to stimulate the areas of our brains that make us more likely to bring about positive changes in relation to our lives, how we feel about our lives and our health. It's also a good idea to suggest to your client that these affirmations are read and said to themselves as soon as they engage in any of those old behaviors or old beliefs. So as soon as I'm going, oh, I don't really feel like I can make tea tonight because I've got a bit of a flare up, start repeating. And even if it's okay to rest and relax, that's a good one. And maybe still get out of making tea. But just when there's a real dose of honesty that needs to be had when dealing with autoimmune. You need to guide your clients to get really honest with themselves so that they can recognize when they use these conditions to benefit them, because it's just reinforcing anything that's there. So yeah, we want to have realistic expectations as well. We can't promise cures. And, you know, for a lot of people, they do have unchangeable, uncurable medical difficulties. Let's not offer false hope, because, you know, they'll have probably had false hope so many times before, like, try this, it'll help, do this, it'll help, read that, it'll help, do this, it'll help. So, you know, create a sense of acceptance of where they're at, create a sense of control within their lives, help them to take a little bit of a step back from the thing or the symptoms that are like really bothering them. And begin to think about those things, the negative things, as things that they are experiencing, but they're no longer battling, they're no longer fighting, almost a bit like a surrender to it, and then a kind of acceptance of where it's at, and then, you know, taking action on it if they need to take action, and then moving forward. So there's loads of clinical evidence that suggests hypnosis can alter immune system responses. And even the Journal of Psychiatric Research suggests that pleasant imagery was an effective intervention for reducing chronic pain and fatigue during a 28-day study. So we can help with the food issues using hypnosis. There's loads we can do, isn't there, with hypnosis when it comes to helping people have better choices with food. We can help them with weight management, you know, getting their body shape and size down, reducing and having a healthier physique is going to be really helpful for anyone with autoimmune. We can recommend that they take a 30-day food holiday from those suspect foods. We can reinforce and build positive associations with those brightly coloured fruits and vegetables that are full of minerals and vitamins. I quite often do a little bit of imagine yourself, bit of future pacing, pseudo orientation in time. Imagine yourself in the future all healthy. Now let your subconscious guide you and tell you what food's got you there, those brightly coloured, rainbow coloured foods that are vibrant and full of energy and life. So making those kinds of positive connections and associations with healthy foods, we can do that, can't we? Because these foods are nurture the body, and these foods are the real medicine for the body. We can support our clients to listen to their bodies, listen and respond. And this is a really important thing to do with our clients, because people with autoimmune tend to think, I'm a bit tired, but I'm just going to push myself. I'm just going to finish this. I'm just going to do this one more thing. And there's very often a lot of perfectionism within these kinds of, I'm very, very generalizing, but there's a lot of, you know, there's kind of like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%, and I'm going to do it absolutely to the best of my ability and as good as it can be. Perfectly imperfect is one of my favorite mantras. But learning to listen, you know, like, know you can have a day off and relax when you're not exhausted. Know that you can go for a nana nap on an afternoon, not because you're ill and you need to, just because it's good for you to do so. And taking a little bit of time out of each day to kind of incorporate self-hypnosis, just taking themselves into trance and just getting the benefit of the stillness and the calm and the real relaxation that you get from just being in trance is really helpful. But teaching our clients to listen to when they're hungry and when they're not hungry, and responding to hunger by eating and not eating when they're not hungry, just like what we did when we were a baby. And we can bring about things like mindful eating. In traditional Chinese medicine, they recommend chewing every mouthful of food 100 times. That's a little bit excessive. Probably probably a little bit too much, but bringing about mindful eating, enjoying each mouthful of food, chewing everything really well, and resting between mouthfuls is going to be really helpful for the digestive system. And checking in between each mouthful. Am I still hungry? Do I want more? And mindfully eating can also help clients to really tune into what they are choosing to eat. If they're looking at it and they're being mindful about it and they know it's just toxic, processed, nasty food, they're going to be less likely to kind of put it in their mouth, and they're going to have less of those kind of harm responses. Hydration, absolutely massive. Lovely suggestions you can add into your session to drink cool, refreshing, healing water. Add some of those suggestions into your sessions, because water helps to carry oxygen to the body's cells, which results in properly functioning systems. It also helps to remove toxins from the body. And people with autoimmune do tend to have challenges with toxic overload anyway, so making sure that you drink plenty of water is really helpful. So how can we work with hypnosis with infections? Well, we know a little bit about psychoneuroimmunology. We can use different visualizations. I did some superhero hypnosis last month. We can bring the superhero in. But in a study at Washington State University, a group of volunteers were given hypnotic suggestions specifically to boost their immune systems. Another group received only relaxing suggestions and no suggestions. And their levels of T and B cells, the T and B cells, they're like your like a task force of special defense cells. Well, they were measured, and those that had received the hypnotic suggestions to boost the immune system showed significant increases in their levels of these kind of SAS protective cells. In Columbus, Ohio, researchers have determined that hypnosis-related relaxation techniques can actually prevent the weakening of the immune response that follows periods of acute stress. And studies also suggest that hypnosis may even slightly enhance the immune status. Hooray! In some people compared to similar individuals who don't use these interventions. So if you use hypnosis, and this is just trance by itself, with some good old-fashioned suggestion therapy, it could boost your T and B cells, get that SAS task force working for you, and it can certainly help prevent the weakening of the immune system if you've been through a particularly stressful time. So I quite often say to my clients, if you've had a really tough time, book in for a session and just come and see me as a kind of regular kind of top-up kind of session. So there've been several studies that have looked at the immune status and how hypnotherapy can improve it. And further research is currently being done to determine if the frequency of the technique, how often clients are using hypnosis, is actually going to help. And not surprisingly, people who practice self-hypnosis continue to have enhanced immune function. And that is what's really benefited me. I've been able to go into self-hypnosis and then use my imagination to instruct my body on what I need, more energy or more rest, or actually visualizing my body healing itself as well. So healing metaphors work great for healing the gut and balancing hormones. Lovely visualizations that you can do and metaphors. Everyone's favorite, the control room technique. Love it. And you could give them a junk room and clear away some of the stressful things as well while you're there. I like an inner pharmacy as well. Let's get in there and mix up some potions. And I might combine that with getting some saliva in the mouth and swallowing the potion, feeling it going down and healing the gut all the way as it goes. Self-hypnosis, for obvious reasons, is brilliant at reinforcing anything that you've done in your session. But an audio, like a reinforcing audio, would be really helpful when we're working to get rid of things like infections and boosting the immune system too. I love a journey through the body. I love a journey to the gut, like healing things on the way through the digestive system. It's brilliant for anyone who's got any of those horrible digestive things, things like IBS as well. And then after we've looked at lifestyle issues, we've made recommendations about food, we've checked that there's no infections, we've advised that they reset their gut health, we've checked to ensure that their hormones are in balance, and we've advised them on removing toxic and toxins from their lives. And we've looked at ways to help them to reduce or manage stress. Then our aim is to reprogram their immune system, get to the root of the stresses, create resilience, create better responses to stressful situations. And I think really importantly, change the client's belief system, reduce the impact of those labels. And we can do this simply by changing language patterns, you know, my autoimmune, I have got the autoimmune I experience, just changing the way we talk about it as well. And then promoting within your sessions sustainable, gotta be sustainable and healthy lifestyle options. For me, the deepest healing was in reframing some troubling childhood experiences I had, and rescuing and reclaiming my inner child has been dramatically healing for me. It is useful to find out if clients suffered from any kind of physical abuse or sexual abuse or emotional abuse or neglect in any way. It's useful to know if anyone in their home that they grew up with had difficulties with substance misuse, or if any of their parents or caregivers had any kind of mental illnesses, or if any of their family members were incarcerated. Sometimes just feeling abandonment from having busy parents who might have had loads of money and loads of amazing holidays, but just feeling abandonment by your parents can be all it needs to bring about trauma. For me, doing that regression therapy work was deeply healing, but before you consider any regression approaches, I think it's really important for you to be sure and to be very clear about what it is that you want to achieve. Reliving negative experiences is really not a good idea and not helpful at all. You're just going to bring everything up to the surface and re-traumatize and cause more problems. And recalling memories, quite often you're going to recall false memories or confused memories, just because the memory stores like snapshots of sensory information. And so it's not going to be accurate what you're recalling. It may be useful to understand things or vent things, but just be really careful as to what your objectives are if you are going to use any kind of regression therapy. I think it may be beneficial or more beneficial to focus on the here and the now and use more like generic clearance techniques, getting rid of all of the things from the past that are causing any of these things to happen. And clearing away the debris or the pain from damage that has come from the past, and then really focusing on guiding our clients to the future that they want, that is absolutely and can be really achievable. That was like 1,000 miles an hour. How are we doing for time? I've really gone over. I'm doing a really good job of going over. I shall press pause, and I'm here if you want to ask me any questions. So thank you for listening, yeah, stay around and ask me any questions if you've got any. Thanks for coming.